and the three of them just passed me, and then I lost them, and then I didn't know where I was going.
I've got a confession all these years later. We lost Mark deliberately and jumped on a bus.
This is the official Leeds United podcast.
Obviously, it's most people involved with Leeds United that have been fans for a while will know exactly who you are, and Bridgey's mentioned you countless times on the show. But for some of our younger listeners and maybe some of our more recent fans, do you want to sort of explain your role at the club and then where you are now to everyone at home?
Yeah, so I got asked to join Leeds in 2000 when the team were obviously on the up. I previously worked at Wolves and Blackburn Rovers Academy, and I got recommended to David O'Leary by a colleague of mine, Dave Fever, who was the physio at Manchester United, believe it or not, but worked with me at Blackburn. And in that era, just before the sort of Champions League run, the team had some horrendous injuries. David Batty had ruptured his Achilles, Michael was out, Harry Kewell was out. I think it was like 9 or 10 players that were in the treatment room when I walked through the door. And I was really young. I think I was 27 or 28 as being a head physio, which is obviously quite young in the Premier League at that time. And I just came in and sort of looked and analysed, and then inherited some really good staff. Alan Sutton, who obviously a lot of the listeners will know, was an absolute legend at the club, and it was a great person for me to inherit and have on board. And Mark Nile, who'd previously been at Middlesbrough. Clive was the massage therapist who'd been in the military, who was also very good. And so I inherited some good people, and then I brought some good people on. So I brought Steve Kemp, who's now the England physio, was our academy physio. Tim Williamson, who's now the head physio at Glasgow Celtic, was with us at the academy. And Harvey Sharman, who was my assistant, basically now is the vice president of medical performance at the Washington Nationals baseball team in America. So Harvey took over from me when I left to go from Leeds to Chelsea. So I was at the club from 2000 to 2007 or 2006, and went through all the Champions League runs, went through all the financial crisis. I designed Thorpe Arch, which was probably my big legacy.
Well, we're going to talk about that because there's a few flaws in that.
Was that when your builders from the northeast came down to do a couple of jobs on the cheap?
I've got to say, that Thorpe Arch design, right, when I got there was nothing. Dave obviously came in and, ahead of the game, he designed. I remember saying to him, I said, what are them plans there? And he went, I'm designing the new Thorpe Arch facility, Bridge. And I was like, wow, this guy, is there anything he can't do? Now, I've never, ever known a physio be able to design a training ground where the manager's office is at the other end and the physio get the centre biggest area of the facility in the club, and Dave's got access to the main room. And not only that, the bloody spiral staircase that you put in, that I had to hobble up every single day. There was no lift or anything. That was a flaw as well. But apart from that, it was a magnificent facility. There you go.
That was to get you back on your feet.
Yeah, my heart bled for you every day watching you go up and down that stairs, Bridgie. Actually, I used to make you go down in that ice room just to actually get more exercise through your legs.
Listening on together.
I think if Dave had been there from when I signed in 99-2000, I probably wouldn't have passed my medical, because you just talked about a legend of the football club, Alan Sutton. I remember going with Alan Sutton to do my medical to see the doctor, and basically it was a little blood sample at the end of your finger and a reflexology test on me, like a reflex test on my knee, so that it just literally hit a hammer off my knee to see if my knee would move. And I thought, this is absolutely brilliant. I'm expecting to do like fitness tests, body fats, nothing. So I got through the medical.
You would have certainly failed at body fat, Bridget.
You're not wrong. I was probably the skinniest fat man that ever was at Leeds. But I remember seeing all these bloody oxygen tanks on him. He had this mask on. Dave was telling him to run faster, and he was going, "Can you move and run faster, mate, if you want to get through this?" And then he put him through this drill to give him a stretch and like test. And he might as well have, if it was MMA fighting, Dom would have tapped out. Dave had him in these positions to see if he could pass. And I'm thinking, thank God I signed a year earlier. But the timing of us all getting injured and having a new facility with this high-end physio that we'd never seen before, I think a lot of the players have got to be very, very grateful that there's a place to be there and we want a great run. But there's also a time and a place when things happen that we might not have had the career that we would have had if we didn't have this man in charge of our high-end facility.
Do you feel a degree of pressure with that, Dave? I mean, like, the club at that time, and obviously that's how football's gone now, but the club was spending an awful lot of money on some of these players. Do you feel a degree of pressure that you've got to make sure that they're going to get bang for their buck? Like, that they're not buying a knackered player, or the player's not going to break down after a few weeks? Do you feel in that medical, you've got to make sure you put them through their paces?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even then, like, we would sign in players to like world record fees back then. So, the view is spending that sort of money, you've got to make sure that, the player that you're signing is, completely fit and able to do what they do. And we've seen, like, unfortunately, Eden Hazard just in the news recently about retiring, that, he went from Chelsea to Madrid, and they got nothing out of him. And they spent $100 million on his rights and plus his wages. I mean, it's a lot of money. So my view would be that, we've got this one opportunity to do some baseline testing as well. So the things that Michael talking about, back then was sort of more sports science-led, lab-based testing, seeing how fit they are, looking at all the cardio issues that can appear within doing medicals, making sure that their heart and lungs are cleared, having some baseline strength tests that we could use if there was an injury. So we were collecting a lot of objective data and also dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And my view would be, I said to the manager and the chairman at the time that, if this is going to take 2 days, it's going to take 2 days. You've just got to give me 2 days to let me do my job, and I'll present to you all the data and all the information, and then the decision is yours. But, if someone is going to fail, someone's going to fail.
Dave, how did they handle that when you told them that? Because obviously I'd been there and seen a lot of players come in the medical. I think my medical was about 45 minutes. What was their take on that? If you're telling them it's going to take 2.5 to 3 days now to get a signing over the line, did that go down well with them?
No, not really, because a lot of the time you got pressures from agents and people wanting to get the deal or transfer deadlines. But look, if you're going to do anything in life, let's say for instance you're going to buy a business, you're going to do your due diligence on the business. You're not just going to turn around and go, oh, it looks good, I'm going to buy it. Why would we do anything different with signing players? So, my view would be, if you want me to do the right job, you've got to give me the time to do the right job. If you don't, then it's on you. It's nothing to do with me. My conscience is clear. And that's really the attitude that I had and have sort of always had when it sort of came to doing medicals. And then obviously as times progress now with the Premier League and having full-time doctors, most of this is led from a doctor perspective. The physio is sort of more of an add-on, but it's the same principles that you need to make sure that you're collecting and reviewing and making sure that you're, looking at the risk management of that athlete to move forward for, 3, 4, 5, or now even 6 or 7 year deals that they're giving athletes.
We as players, and we had a right good group of players, we used to think we could get away with anything. So we're like a pack of wolves. So you get a new guy coming in, right? He's up from London. He's giving it, I'm bloody Dave Hancock and I'm here and all this, right? And he's turned up. The amount of stick that we used to try and put on this guy to test him because he looks so young, and we're thinking, what the hell can he do for us? So mate, how were them first few months when you came? How did you find us lot at the time?
Well, I'm not allowed to swear on this podcast.
No, you can.
You can, Dave. We'll just get it out.
But it was a nightmare. I remember seeing Batty's photos for his Achilles rupture and how they've had to reconstruct his Achilles. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, I'm not even sure this guy's going to be able to walk, let alone play professional football, right? And then it was like something out of MASH. I walked in and there was like 10 players in this there was a tiny room at the old training
physio room, wasn't it?
And I'm thinking, oh my God, like what have I done here? But my view is, look, I just had to get my head down and work with the team and bring the people that were already there that I inherited, which were fantastic people, fantastic team we had. And we also, the beauty of having the long-term injuries like the Battys and Michael and a few of the others was that we had such great camaraderie, and putting some laughs and some fun into the daily activities that we were doing was just like kept everyone going. There was nothing better than that team at Leeds United at that time.
So I remember Dave came in, and when he says we came in, it was like a scene from MASH. These new guys walked in, I think there was 4 beds in that physio department at the time. And there'd be people just sitting on the benches, they'd be on their mobile phones, the newspapers out, and in came Mr. Hierarch, and he was like, right, the bloody pipers can go, the marble fouls can off. None of this now, you're going to work. So what we used to do, we used to hide a mobile phone in there and just ring it and send the ringtone off, and you could just see this guy burning, going, whose phone is ringing? We're like, find the phone. Just little stupid things like that to wind and irritate Dave up.
But Matt, I used to get my own back because we used to do a thing called a 20-20-20, right? God. So my view was that these players, when I first went in, they were leaving at 1 o'clock.
Right.
And I'm like, no, you're injured, you're here all day. I'm here all day, you're here all day. Yeah. And your job and my job is to get you fit. So we used to call it 9 to 5. And it was literally 9 to 5. And then the way that the day was structured,
sometimes
we would have
it was 9 till 9.
You used to come to my clinic sometimes, didn't you? Remember that? You used to come to the clinic at Virgin Active in Leeds, like for late night treatment. Hilarious. But to be fair, every footballer wants to get themselves. They don't want to be in the treatment room. They want to get themselves back and fit. Yeah. But this was a regiment that I'd worked for me. At the end of the day, what you put into it is what you get out of it. Right. So we used to do an hour and a half treatment and then an hour and a half or an hour cardio. And then in the afternoon, we do an hour and a half treatment and then another hour of cardio. And that's how the day was structured. Okay. And then part of that cardio was a 20-20-20. So they would do 20 minutes bike, 20 minutes elliptical, 20 minutes boxing or 20 minutes weights or whatever it would be. And then we really got into boxing. So at the old Thorpe Arch, there was a courtyard. So in the afternoons, we had boxing sessions, right? Where, like Bridgey, if he was in a plaster cast, he'd be kneeling boxing. There'd be no way that they'd get out of doing the boxing session. Just
turn it like a Royal Rumble, though, at the end of the session, because everybody was so pumped up, we just ended up swinging for each other. It was quality. Another thing, personally, for me, I think if I hadn't been in 9 till 5 or going in with Dave to his clinics after work, going home at 1 o'clock through the situation that I'd been in, mentally that could have been very dangerous for me, sitting in a house, not being able to physically get up and do things. So for that side of it, for me, I'm very grateful that he changed my mindset on that side of it, because I could have been in a really, really dangerous place.
Yeah. And I've dealt with some players that have obviously gone through those mental aspects, in both in football and in basketball and in other American sports over here. It's a real thing. I think the thing with all of this is that when you're in a group setting, rather than like Michael says, if you go home by yourself, you don't know what you're doing. You're thinking about your injury and you're thinking about, is my career, all the negative thoughts that come about. Like, we did something different every single day. Right. So in the treatment room, for instance, Suddy had this book, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Right, and it was an ongoing joke that we would ask the players on both sides of the treatment room $1 million question, right? So you can imagine asking Jonathan Woodgate $1 million, who wants to millionaire? We would have been there till Christmas in 2032, waiting for the answer for that. So, like us laughing like this now, well, you can imagine what this was like in a treatment room while we're all doing our job. So, and every day we had stuff like this going on, and then we would have the training. I mean, I remember someone clocked me on the boxing once. And everyone turned around, stopped, and just started themselves laughing. And obviously, I couldn't do anything else apart from just laugh at the situation that one of the players had just hit me. Probably did it on purpose, but I'd take it on the chin.
He won 50 quid for that.
So I think that from a mental perspective and being really positive about the outlook and just bringing it in as a team, and like everyone's dealing with their own situations, but when you're in that environment you can create that competition. So we're like, for instance, on a Friday we used to do crab volleyball. So we would have staff versus players at lunchtime, and the losers, I mean, you probably couldn't do this now, but the losers had to bring in cream cakes the next day, right? That was the deal, that they'd bring in a cream cake on a Friday.
Bridgie, you must have lost all time, man.
Well, can you tell?
That was my motivation.
You can tell when he was playing. And I think he's still playing crab football now by the looks of it. I mean, you wouldn't do this this wouldn't happen nowadays. But we did a 14-mile bike ride in this pouring rain, and I ended up losing all the players: Bats, Jason Wilcox, and Huckabee. And I went off like a lunatic. And then by about mile 3, I'd blown up on the Tour de Hancock, and the 3 of them just passed me, and then I lost them, and then I didn't know where I was going. So it's things like that. And then we went to this old sawdust gym when Adam's there, and he's cooking us like chicken on his little cooking stove, and it was things like that I look back and just think, that is just such a different day,
Dave,
for someone
I've got a confession all
doing
these
the
years
same
later.
shit.
I've got a confession all these years later. There was one, I remember that when the lads went off for you and did that. I did my cycle with Mark Nile and Jace Wilcox, and I've got to say, I'm dropping Jace on the bus here. We actually jumped on a bus. We lost Mark deliberately and jumped on a bus. And got a bus journey back near Thorpe Arch.
Bats and Wilcox told me that they were in Roundhay and they were at a pub. Yeah. And they said they'd had 2 pints before they come into the gym. And I can probably believe them, to be honest. Yeah.
All Leeds, aren't we? The official Leeds United podcast.
My one for you is, who's the worst patient that you had at Leeds United with that group of players, or in general?
Doobs was problematic, to say the least.
Problematic. That's such a diplomatic word to use.
We used to call
Doob
we used to call Doob 50 pence head, because whenever he headed the ball, you weren't sure where it was actually going to go. Right. So I remember when we went up to the new training facility, him and Gary Kelly brought in a fish and they put it in the ceiling because they just wanted to get their own back.
They put it in
to rewind there a second.
They brought a dead fish into the treatment room and they put it in the tiles in the ceiling, and we got this stink, and they wouldn't tell us where it was, right? So for a week we had a dead fish somewhere in the ceiling. I mean, this is like the Neanderthal that I was dealing with on a regular basis. But so and Doobs always want to have like a 4-hour discussion about why we're doing X and Y, and that he didn't really need to box and go in the pool and that. Although I do remember, to be fair to Doobs, we went to a pool once before we had that. I remember this, Mike. You probably weren't there at this session, but we went to a swimming pool before we had the swimming pool at the Thorpe Arch. We went to a swimming pool somewhere in Tadcaster, and Doobs was injured. And I remember, the old brick where you put it down, you had to swim down and get the brick. So we were doing that, where you'd swim down, get the brick, put the brick above your head, right, and drop it. And we were doing like relays in the deep. And I remember, obviously, I don't think Doobs could swim that well, and he did say to me, and to be fair to Doobs, he tried. He went out of his way to try. He picked up this brick, and then when he let it go, it dropped on his head. Right, and all of a sudden he went under the water, and I remember I dived in. Right, I'm on the sidelines thinking, "Oh my God, I've just one of the players at Leeds United is going to drown in Tadcaster pool." And of
Didn't
course,
do much damage to him, like.
I'm not sure which way the brick bounced off his head on that one.
Listening on together.
Did you play in that game where they did pass the penny?
No, I didn't, but Robbie Fowler brought that in.
Oh, yeah. So, Matt, they played a Premier... I mean, listen, this is obviously a few years ago. they played a Premier League game for 90 minutes. So, I'm watching what's happening in the game, and all of a sudden, they're touching hands, while the game's going on, right? So I remember running on the pitch to someone, and I've ran on the pitch, and all of a sudden, I think it was McPhail, and all of a sudden, Gary Kelly's come up to him, and he's like, shook his hand. And I'm looking at him, what the is going on here? They had a penny, and they're passing the penny throughout the whole game. And if they passed you the penny, you have to hold the penny while you're playing the game and pass it on.
And there was all these rules.
Then we won the game, though, didn't we?
And they
won the game. Went on 5 straight, I do believe. I'm not sure how many games. Lads went 5 straight. There was a rules and regulations, though. If you dropped the penny, you had to pay a fine. If you refused the penny, there was a fine. Whoever had the penny at half time, there was a fine, and whoever had it at full time, there was a fine. The only time that you don't give it is, obviously, we go back to IQ, Johnny Woodgate, of none. The only time you shouldn't pass the penny is to a goalkeeper when there's a corner, because then Nigel's only got one hand then, hasn't he? So you can imagine thinking, what's going to happen here? In his glove, and he's going, you've just given me the penny, and the quote was, you can't refuse it, can you, because there'll be a fine. And he's like, it's a corner.
The idea of this, what Robbie Fowler's great idea is, this is going to get you out of your heads.
And it did. It got the lads back into a game mode, because everybody's feeling the pressure. So he designed a game within a game, which I think he'd picked up at Liverpool. So incredible.
Who was gaffer at that point?
That would have been O'Leary.
That was still O'Leary. Did he learn about this game?
No, but he does now.
He does now.
I think he's learned about a few other things from this podcast today as well. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to think he's been wondering why on earth he hired me and hired you. It sounds like we never played football, doesn't it? It sounds like carry on football. This. It sounds like we were just, we were rag-ass rovers, but we when it came to playing, they were very professional, honestly.
This is the official Leeds United podcast.